16-year-old Mary was having a tough day, and she was stretched out on the couch, as teenagers often do, and she was lamenting, and she was having a well-deserved moment of complaining and self-pitying, and woe is me, and you know the experience that you probably witnessed or participated in yourself. And so she moaned all this to her mom and her brother happened to be sitting there playing video games, and he was totally focused in the video games and pushing the buttons. And she says, nobody loves me, the whole world hates me. And he says, well, that's not true. He says, some people don't even know you. Now, leave it to a sibling to know what to say, right? Or how to say it. Have you ever had in an experience, and I'm sure you have, but have you ever had in an experience in your life a pearl of wisdom emerge from your mouth in a interesting moment where you've just opened your mouth and said something profound or interesting or whatever it is, and it just can't, you don't know where it came from. It just, all of a sudden, there it was. And you spoke it, and you go, whoa, was that me? You know? And it wasn't you, and it was you. It wasn't you, and it was you. I remember when I was in Spokane, and it was 1975, and I was involved in the Spokane JCs, heavily involved, and I was on the board of directors. And a group of folks from the board approached me and asked me if I would run for president. And I was very flattered, and my ego was very present in that moment. And I was assuming that when they asked me to run for president, it was sort of a divine appointment, and that it was just it's just kind of a, routine thing to go through the election process. But I went out and went through that, and I did a little brochure, small little brochure, and said what I would do and how I wanted to show up, and all the stuff that you do with that. And I did a really good job with that, and I passed it out, and I spent a little bit of time, but I just sort of had this sort of energy that it was sort of like I was anointed, right? And so it didn't matter, right? And so I showed up, and the night of the election, right? And the chapter has 300 people, and there was a big group there, and we were in the Washington Water Power at that time. It now is a Vista, but it's called Washington Water Power at that time. We were in the auditorium for the election evening, and so everybody was there, and my opponent, who I perceived didn't really have what it took to be president. He got up and gave his talk, and I got up and gave my little talk, and of course, then they took the vote. And I lost. He won. And I was stunned. It was one of those moments, when you're stunned. And I had no thought about a concession speech or, any of that. And they said, okay, Steve, why don't you come on up and say a few words, And so I'm up there, and I'm walking across, to the lectern, and I'm thinking, as I'm walking across, not having any idea what to say, and I'm thinking, God, you've got to speak through me right now, because I have no idea what to say. And so I'm walking up there, and I get to the lectern, and I turn and I look out at everybody, and take a breath, and I look down, and on the lectern was my campaign brochure with my picture on the front. And so I picked it up, and there was no thought going through my mind. I was not sitting there thinking anything. I picked it up, and I turned, and I said, you will notice, just like this, you will notice that there's no date on this brochure. And everybody jumped out of their seat with a big standing ovation. And it was like I had won. But I hadn't won. But it was a transformative moment in a lot of ways, because it wasn't me that was speaking. It was Spirit that spoke exactly what needed to be spoken in that moment in order to bring the energy together. And there is no way that I could have thought that up or sat down and wrote any kind of a script or had any kind of clever sort of response. And it wasn't clever, it was an inspired moment. And Spirit does that in our lives if we are open to it. If we simply have the presence when we're walking to that place to say, God, I don't know what to say. Speak through me. You know, I was, a week ago Monday, they had a graveside service for Don Street. And I had called Nellie like the Thursday or Friday before, and I was out of town. I didn't hear about his passing for a few days, and I called her and to express my condolences and so on and so forth. And she said, and I asked her, I said, what are the plans for the services? And she said, well, we're having a graveside service on Monday. It's 11:30. It's going to be in Linwood. And I said, oh, good. I said, I can go. That's great. I'll be up that way. I might be, get right there because I have some appointments I have to deal with, but I might get there right when it starts, but I'll make sure that I'm there, if at all possible. And she says, that's great, that's fine. And that's how we left it. And she didn't say anything about who's doing the service or anything else. And so I show up, and I had just come from an appointment. I had a pair of khaki pants on and a burgundy kind of a pullover shirt and a jacket. And I pull up to the cemetery, and I look over kind of in one area, and there's this tent, and all these people are over there, and they're all in black suits and all this stuff, and I think that can't be it, because Nellie said that there was only going to be a couple of people there, not very many people are going to show up. And so I went into the office and I said, where's the street, Don Street's, internment? And they said, oh, it's right over there, pointed to the group that was over there. And so I got in my car and went over there, and I walked over, and as I got closer I could see there was Tony and Nancy and some of the folks from church that were there, Robin and Michael. And so then they had the tent and the chairs, and it was set up very formally, and there must have been 30, 35, quite a group of people, and so I walked, there's Nellie, and so I went up to Nellie, and I kneeled down, and I expressed my condolences, and I said, who's going to do the service? And she looked at me and she said, you are. And I said, well, I didn't bring my stuff. I'm not ready. She said, God's ready. You're doing it. And there was no wavering in her voice. There was no, oh, that's too bad in her voice. There's no, oh, I feel sorry for you in her voice. It was absolutely clear that you're doing the service. That's the way it is. And I went, okay, I surrender. And fortunately somebody had a couple of things, and I grabbed it. And then I thought, okay, I sat there and, okay, Spirit, you've got to speak. I don't have my stuff.